Who works within an organization that has moved to Office 365, is in the process of moving to Office 365, or is planning to in the near future? By a show of hands. Fantastic. Because that's about right and probably accurate for this room as well. 78%. So a lot of people are moving to the cloud. But really what we're trying to show here is the fact that a lot of people are moving to the internet, as we all know, and we're creating lots and lots and lots of data. So it should come as absolutely no surprise that we're moving towards innovative and new solutions such as cloud services. And also when it comes to applications, it goes the same way as well. And there's many good reasons why people are moving to services such as Google or Office 365. Some of it because of elasticity, some of it because of cost, and some of it because of ease of deployment. But why should I care? What's important about this session when we're talking about security? Well, interestingly, Gartner is estimating by 2021 that 27% of corporate data is going to be bypassing corporate traditional perimeter security. Now, what's the reason for that? Well, mostly because we're moving our data into a different place. Our traditional next-generation firewalls are not going to give the same protection. So we need to start thinking about security in a very, very different way. And interestingly with that, cloud cybersecurity is very much a shared responsibility with the service providers such as Google and Microsoft, as well as the customers. And because of this, the majority of breaches and security failures that are going to happen and do happen tend to be the customer's fault. Now, the responsibilities of the Microsofts of this world and the Googles of this world really come into providing solid uptime and a secure front end, because they don't want anybody breaching that. But when it comes to the customer's responsibility, the bits that they're focused on, and that's all of us, well, firstly, it's the end-user cloud activity. So that is what people are sharing in the cloud and what kind of passwords people are using, because is somebody using password 123 or a variant of password 123, guessable password? If those accounts become compromised, or if somebody's just written their password on a nice little post-it note, stuck it to their monitor, it does happen. If somebody gets those credentials, they get access to a lot of data. Now, the Microsofts of this world are not going to take responsibility for that. They're going to say, nope, it's your responsibility, it's your data, you need to look after it. But there's another part to this, which is the OAuth connected apps. That's the app-to-app connectivity, where you can share data between different applications. And that's what this session is going to be focused on specifically. Now, the agenda today, we're going to have a look at OAuth and get to understand that a little bit more. The idea of that is that if you understand these things, then it helps you create defense around it. Then we're going to have a look at the threat, go through an attack demo, step by step, seeing how an attack could be carried out. Then we're going to have a look at the defensive tools which are available to you to protect yourselves from the wonderful cloud environments. So firstly, OAuth. There is an RFC. It is a protocol. You can read it. But what I wanted to do today was sort of distill some of that down, distill some of the basic facts around it so that you don't have to go and read it unless you have issues with sleep and insomnia. Then go for your life. It's a wonderful read. And there might be some people sitting here thinking, well, what is OAuth? If you've ever used buttons like this before to log into a website, then you've used OAuth. So if you've gone to a website and it says, log in with Google or log in with Facebook, that's using OAuth. So what is it? Well, it provides simplified access. The idea of it is you only have to remember one set of credentials. And the real part where OAuth comes into it is the ability to share data through APIs. So you can link two applications together. So what are we talking about? Well, simplified workflow. Well, for a home user, you've got your mobile phone. You log in to Spotify via Facebook. Nice and simple, one set of credentials. But what's it doing? As soon as you log in, Spotify will then ask you to authorize a range of different access to Facebook. So that could be your Facebook groups, your Facebook friends, the news feed. Now, what does this do? Why is it doing this? Well, partially, Spotify is doing this because they can do some targeted advertising, and that's a bit of a win for Spotify. But ultimately, it's enhancing the user's experience because it means that the two applications are linked so that you can then go and share your favorite songs with all your friends and show them what wonderful music taste you either have or have not. But it also works in the business world as well. So this is where you can log in through your laptop to Evernote via your corporate Google account. Now what that's doing is it's linking your corporate data environment to Evernote, which means that you can then go into Evernote and you can create notes and put them in your calendar. And you can go through your email and then save specific emails or contacts into Evernote. It enables you to share data between those two different platforms without having to go in and copy and paste that information. It enhances those applications, creates connectivity. So specifically, the fundamentals. OAuth is all about that authorization piece. That's allowing the access to the data for two different applications. It's not specifically about the authentication. Now, the authentication piece, that single sign-on experience, is actually held by those data providers, the Facebooks of this world, the Googles of this world. They're the ones that create the authentication. But the authorization part behind it, that ability to share data over API, that bit that you authorize when you allow Spotify to have access to all your contacts or any other information within Facebook, that's the OAuth part we're talking about. And when it comes to authentication, OAuth is very open. You can use any type of authentication that you want. So you could use Facebook Connect, you can use LDAP, OpenID Connect is the one that tends to be most used. Now there is a product out there that we use within Cisco, it's very popular when it comes to a single sign-on experience, called Ping Identity. Now, does anyone else here use Ping Identity in their workplace? Okay, it's just us. Happy days. Now, Ping Identity, they've made a whole product out of OpenID Connect and OAuth, and I've combined them together, created a nice application, and it means you've got a real simple single sign-on experience for all of your web applications. But ultimately, what this boils down to is a very nice, secure, delegated access system for any application. And it's not just those applications, but it's also for the home users too, because you don't need to have separate infrastructure and a whole LDAP infrastructure to create that identity for those home users. So it just works for them, so they can use Facebook or they can use Google to link applications together and have that single sign-on experience if you have those accounts. And it's designed to be flexible for different implementations. So you can have OAuth working for televisions or apps on mobile phones or web app to web app integrations as well. So it's very flexible too. So hopefully you've all got a good understanding of what we're talking about, what OAuth is and what OAuth is for. Let's investigate some of the threats involved. So going back to those cloud attack vectors, well, the first thing people are usually concerned about when we're talking about cloud environments is finding improperly shared data. It's what kind of data has been put into my cloud environment. Is somebody taking a confidential document or something that shouldn't be seen by anybody else and putting that into Box or Dropbox and sharing it with everybody? Understanding how that data is being moved around. And that's especially key when we're thinking about the upcoming GDPR regulations. We need to understand where our data is. And that's one of the first things people think of when you think about cloud security and getting visibility. Second thing, of course, is identities. Has somebody's identity been compromised? Has their credentials been stolen? And is somebody logging into their Google environment that's a malicious actor? But ultimately, it's those OAuth connected apps. These are the ones that are often neglected. And again, these are the ones we're focusing on. So by now, you might be thinking about some of the threats around OAuth and some of the risks. Well, the risks, if you connect a malicious application, could be loss of data. So somebody can get access to the data in your environment. Could be loss of control of your environment, because once they get in there, maybe they can start changing information around, and you can lose control of your environment. You can risk further incursions, especially through social engineering, because if people are stealing data and information, then they can make the next step and try and use that against maybe the finance department, maybe extract some more money out of it, monetize the situation. Or there could be bribery through loss of IP data. So if somebody steals intellectual property data from your cloud environment, they can then start bribery. Or they could then sell that intellectual property to another source, as we saw with Mustafa's presentation earlier, where they sold that IP data. But ultimately, it can lead to a lack of trust in your organization, because that's what breaches usually result in. So the risk exposure, well, as we saw earlier, there's a lot of people moving to SaaS applications in the cloud, specifically Office 365. That was nearly 80% of you, which was fortunate because it tallied in with my statistics, which is good. But also with Google and G Suite. That's used by more than 3 million paying businesses. So these applications are being heavily moved to, and people are heavily using them. So the risk exposure is very real, because when it comes to these kind of platforms, these all tie in to third-party connected apps, OAuth connected applications. Your end users, if they have an account with Microsoft Office 365 or Google G Suite, can go to any site that is a connected app, and they can use that to log into them. And they can use that OAuth mechanism. And they can also authorize those applications to have access to their Google or Microsoft environments. So the risk is very real. And when it comes to the risk exposure, well, 2014, there was 5,500 connected apps out there in the wild. When it comes to 2017, that's nearly 300,000. And the issue with that is that not all of them are going to be safe. Some of them, and quite a lot of them, roughly around 27% of them, are going to be high-risk applications. And what do we mean by high risk? Well, not necessarily controlled by a malicious actor, but they just could be written badly or implemented badly. So essentially, if somebody were to break into one of those applications that's written badly and has bad security around it, they could then, by proxy, have access to your data. So there's a lot of risk out there. Now, when it comes to the threat specifically, and when most people think about OAuth and the threats, they think of the Google phishing attack that happened last year. Now, specifically, that was May the 3rd, 2017. We were out at a sales conference in the United States when this broke, and before that time, speaking to people about OAuth, most people had a bit of a blank expression on their face and went, well, it's there, I accept it, it's fine. As soon as this threat came out, as soon as this attack came out, it changed a lot of people's opinion. People suddenly realized that the threat was very real, and a lot of people don't have appropriate security around their cloud environments, let's say. So what happened? Well, the attackers gained access and gained control to end users' email and their contacts. There was over 1 million accounts compromised, and the attack only lasted for 2 hours before Google delisted that malicious application. Approximately 300,000 corporations were infected. So it was very, very widespread, and it spread very, very rapidly. But how did it work? Well, firstly, the attacker created a malicious application. They then listed it on Google. And the reason that they did that was to get that login with Google, you have to list your application on Google. And so they did that. And they made it look very authentic. So they made it look like a Google Docs application. And they emailed links to that Google Docs application, which was a fake application, out to a wide range of different people. Phishing attack. But then it spread automatically. So as soon as somebody went and clicked that link and they authorized that application, the first thing it did was gain access to their contacts. From that, harvested the contacts and then created its own phishing emails, so worm-like behavior, and spread out automatically. And so when people received these emails, these phishing emails, they looked like it was from somebody they knew. And it looked legitimate because it looked like it was for Google Docs. So people clicked on it, and then it propagated, and on and on and on for that 2 hours that it was active for. And of course, it was, well, as you saw, the damage was very widespread. Now, there are a lot of common misconceptions around OAuth and the protection around it. The first one is changing passwords is not going to remove the threat. So if you think your account has been compromised, if you think your corporate account has been compromised, changing passwords is not going to do anything. The reason why? Well, the whole setup of OAuth is designed so that if you change your password, the access stays. It's meant to be there because it's meant to be flexible. Because the alternative, of course, is to put your username and password into every single connected application. You want to change your password, you have to go around to every single one of them and change the access. That would be very painful. This is why OAuth was developed. So changing passwords doesn't do anything. What you can do is go into your account and delist the application. Essentially what that does, OAuth is based around tokens and tokenized access. Clicking on remove removes access to that token. Enabling multi-factor authentication, again, that's not going to protect you from an OAuth-based attack for exactly the same reasons that changing passwords won't. And OAuth-based attacks, well, they're not Google only. I know the big one that we saw was Google-based, but there have been many others as well since then. If everybody remembers back to the US elections and the email-based attacks that were involved in that, that was based around OAuth. It was the same kind of attack. And it was exactly the same for the French elections, which were not too long afterwards. Again, people had their email compromised, politicians and whatnot, and that was, again, driven by OAuth. So the threat is very, very real, and it happens a lot. So, an attack demo. What I want to do here is take you step by step through an attack that's based on OAuth to see how easy it is to perpetrate one. Well, the first thing we need to do is do a bit of reconnaissance, same as any attack. And that really relates back to what Lee was saying when he was talking about the kill chain. First thing we need to do with our attack is do a bit of recon. Reason for that is we need to understand who we're attacking, who we're targeting. In this case, Chuck Robbins, who is our wonderful CEO, if you're not familiar. As you can see, I'm not a first direct friend. I should probably connect with him and redo the slides. The idea of doing that connecting is to find out who we're targeting. Because what we need to do is try and craft a phishing email. And a phishing email is only going to be effective if somebody's going to find it believable. So we need to build up our identity of the person. We need to make and craft our email specifically for them. So if we know Chuck is the CEO of Cisco, then we're going to have a good idea about what the kind of things he's going to be looking at in email, what he's going to find is acceptable. The next thing we need to do is craft our application. So we can craft our malicious application. In this case, maybe we want to gain access to Chuck's cloud environment and have access to his data, steal all of his data. So we can craft our application, and the next thing we need to do is then register the application on Google, because we want that login with Google bit, because we want to authorize the application within his Google environment. And to do that, you just need to provide our application name, our application website, a redirect URI, so Google knows what application to link to, and set our required permissions and graphics. Now, if you want to have a go and play around with this, you can go to developers.google.com and go to the OAuth Playground. And in there, you can mess around with applications, mess around with OAuth, and really have a play and see how it works. You can also go to developers.google.com, and this is what I went to when I was putting this part together. And you can register up to 12 free applications before you have to start paying. Now, when it comes to setting up and registering your application, you can make it look whatever you want it to look like, really. There's no restrictions. So I wanted this to look like DocuSign because I thought maybe Chuck would click on something that looks like DocuSign because that's very business related and something a CEO might be interested in. And I went onto Google and I Googled DocuSign, stole that nice little graphic, added it to the authorization page, and registered a domain called MockUSign. Looks almost right. Then we set our scope. So the scope is all about the API access that we're going to provide to our malicious application, or what our malicious application wants access to. So in this case, we can ask for access to email, to data, to contacts, a whole suite of different things. We could get really greedy, or we could cut back on a few things if we don't want to arouse suspicion, for an example. Then we craft our phishing email. So this phishing email, shameless plug for InfoSec 2017, will all be there if you want to come and chat to us, if you're coming to it. But we crafted this, and it's a nice email coming from InfoSec asking Chuck to sign an InfoSec vendor compliance agreement. So hopefully he's going to click on that link and then authorize it through our MockQSign website. So what's happened here? We've set up our malicious infrastructure, we've sent our phishing email, and then hopefully Chuck's going to click on that, and then that is going to be redirected to his Google environment. At that point, Chuck will be asked to sign into his Google environment, and then he'll be presented with the next screen. And this is the authorization screen. And as you can see, we've got our lovely DocuSign logo up there. Looks all very official. But trust me, it isn't, because it's our MockQSign site. And you can see here all the permissions that we're asking for. So this is our malicious application asking for a load of different rights. And we can view, edit, delete any document within his G drive, for example. So what's happened? Chuck's been prompted to allow or deny access. If he allows the access, then they're going to be redirected to the Google environment, and a token is going to be exchanged between the malicious application and the Google environment. So we're going to have that access we've authorized. And once we've got access, then we've got total access to all of his data and every single permission that we've asked for. And we can take a leaf out of the Google attack book, we can access his contacts and start spreading extra emails off the back of that and use that to spread our attack in worm-like fashion. But that kind of attack isn't the only attack you can have. Going back to Lee's initial presentation, we can also do ransomware in the cloud using the same mechanism. The only difference is, instead of harvesting data, instead of stealing that data from the cloud, we can start encrypting things in the cloud, and then asking somebody to pay us a ransom to get their data back. Now I've got a nice little video of how this works, hopefully. Yes. So as you can see here, we've got the phishing email. We've clicked on the link, and this link is asking to allow DocuSign, but in this circumstance, it's actually pointing to Dropbox. So we're not authorizing to DocuSign at all, we're authorizing our application to Dropbox. As soon as we've authorized that application, this malicious application, first thing it starts doing, because it's got access to data, is start encrypting the data. Because it's allowed to move, edit, do whatever it wants to do, because we've authorized that application to have access. As soon as it starts encrypting it, click on any document you have, you won't be able to access it. And then finally, you then get to see the wonderful little screen there that says, this is how much time you have left to pay us some money to get your data back. So ransomware in your cloud environment. It's pretty scary stuff. So hopefully that is enough to create some awareness, let's say, of some of the threats out there within cloud environments. So finally, what kind of defenses do we have to protect ourselves from these kind of threats? Well, there's three key ones, and these are the same three key bits of technology that we've been talking about a lot, at least especially for email security and for Umbrella. The new one on there is CloudLock, which we'll discuss in a moment. But email security is there to prevent the phishing emails from ever getting to you in the first place. But of course, we always need to have a layered defense. Relying on one piece of technology to protect us is a fool's errand. It's never going to protect you from everything. So we need to have email security there to protect us from most of those threats. But then we also need to have Umbrella, because if you're clicking on a link, you want to make sure that that link is going to somewhere good and not to somewhere malicious. So if somebody does click on the link, hopefully with Umbrella, we'll then block access to that domain. And then finally, we've got CloudLock. Now, CloudLock is a CASB solution. Now, for everybody here, does anybody have a Cloud Access Security Broker CASB solution deployed in their environment currently? Does anybody know what one is? Or is this new? Fantastic. New. Good. So, Cloud Access Security Broker. That is a piece of technology all about giving you visibility into your cloud environment. Now, funnily enough, CloudLock is an OAuth application. So it has access to all of your cloud environment for your corporate account. So if you've got a Google account, you will authorize CloudLock to have visibility into your Google account, or if you've got an Office 365 account, the same. And the idea of that is it can then start monitoring how that account is being used. So if your end users want to authorize a third-party application, like Dropbox, to be linked into their corporate Office 365 account, you can do that, and we can monitor that activity. And then when people want to start sharing data into their Dropbox environment, we can then monitor the contents of those documents. So if somebody's trying to upload confidential information or public or PII information, we can pick that up because it has DLP capabilities. And as soon as somebody tries to upload that type of information, what we can do is create a policy to say that, well, you're not allowed to share that type of information. So it will just block the share straight away, automatically, by policy. We can also look at what people are doing with identity. So has somebody logged in once from London, and then within 3 minutes, they've logged into another connected application using the same account from Johannesburg or Sydney? If they have, then that's worth having a look at. We can then understand that potentially that account has been compromised. So we need to have a look at that, possibly lock that account down. And what we can also do is create policies around the connected applications as well. So we can look at the applications based on risk. Our Talos security team very diligently looks at the OAuth world, looks at those near 300,000 connected applications, and looks at the ones that show any signs of having risk. That is to say, they're either A, malicious, or B, they're just not very well written or don't take security seriously. And we can label them as being high risk. And because they've labeled them as being high risk, we can create a policy that says we're not going to allow any connected applications that are high risk. We're just not. So anybody tries to do that with their corporate accounts, they will be denied. Thus, better protecting yourselves. So looking at the platform as a whole, we can see how Cisco Security can defend or help you defend against threats coming in around your cloud environment. So firstly, we've got Cisco Email Security, hopefully block those phishing emails as they come in. But if one does slip through the net, if one is specifically targeted, very cleverly crafted, and it gets through, and somebody gets to the point of authorization, we have two different bits of technology in place. Firstly, we've got Umbrella, which will block the user redirect, so the end user will never be redirected to that site, and that site will never be given access. They'll never receive that access token via OAuth. Alternatively, we could have a policy within CloudLock denying access to malicious applications, or if one gets through because somebody's cleverly put it together, we can revoke access within that console. Now, when it comes to threats, there are more RFCs out there if you wish to read them. Again, if you've got issues with sleeping. This one is specifically around the threat model and security considerations. Now, the first RFC I was showing you there, that one's quite well written. You can actually sit down and read that one. This one is a little bit more hard going. So I would recommend instead having a look at our CloudLock blog, our Umbrella blog, and overall Talos blog to get a bit more information around it. So to finish off, see if this works.
It started like any other morning.
It's just another day at the office. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary.
It was a pretty typical job. I bought 10,000 credentials on the dark web. One of them was an executive. Jackpot.
I need access to all my data, whether I'm at the airport or on site with a client. The cloud is how I do my job.
I go where the money is. And these days, that means the cloud.
I know my network and endpoints inside and out, but the cloud is different.
I had no idea.
I had no idea that anything was happening.
First, I grabbed the data. Customer accounts, personnel records, IP. There's always a market for that kind of information. But the cloud was only the first step. From there, I spread to their endpoints, their network. Say hello to your new admin.
He moved on to desktops, our laptops, our servers, even mobile phones. By the time we realized what had happened, it was too late.
EisenX has been rattled with weeks of
We're talking tons of sites.
accounts have been compromised, causing investor panic. As Eisen stock prices continue to fall.
Years of client lists, contacts, research. Who knows what else they got?
I do this for the money. I'm in and I'm out, and I don't look back.
We're a cloud-first company. Our security needs to go where our users are.
A few organizations get cloud security, but most don't. So for now, my business is good.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much.